Okay, a short reloading video. I am working on trying to form some cases for this Wildcat TAC 30. And I'm just going to show you what I'm doing real quick and then we'll discuss it briefly afterward. But what I'm doing is I've got a pair of calipers. I'm using the depth end and I've got a case in the chamber. So I'm setting it up and I've got this little system I'm using. Alright, I got a 465. I got a 465 on the calipers there. Let's get that in frame. There you go. So what I have here, I'm gonna pick you up and bring you over. Let me pop the case out. So it's kind of an unscientific, or maybe it's scientific, but it's not very precise. But it's something that I'm doing just to get myself a feel of where my die is set up. Let me pick you up, bring you over and show you what I'm up to. Alright, so, whoopsie, finger. So there you can see the formed case. It's unfired, see it's been formed. And then here's a fired case that has not been resized. So that's at like the chamber size. And then here's another one. I did two of the fired cases. So what you got here, I basically stuck the case in the barrel as far as I could. And then I used a method to kind of use a depth gauge on them by basically putting this on the case rim, and then this was on a piece of the upper, and then I pressed together like so until I got a reading, which is when the base of the calipers here was hitting a detail on the barrel, which it ends up being where the feed ramps are. So I did that 9 times, as you can see, and what I got was, not unreasonable numbers. I would say it's too variable, especially between this average and this average, to say I'm going to set a certain amount of headspace or I'm going to bump 4 thousandths or whatever. But for the purposes of a formed case, this averages out to what, 0.46, probably 4 something. All right, let's go with 4. You can kind of sort of see, well, I'm in the ballpark because I'm moving a shoulder back from a 6.8 SPC into this TAC 30. Well, I don't want to set my die up, resize, and then have the case be too big. So what does this number mean? Well, that means it's the depth into the chamber that basically I was able to push the case. Well, that bigger number tells me that it's farther into the chamber, which means it's smaller than fire-formed cases. These two would be fire-formed. So that's actually a good thing. If I had like a 0.435 or something, I might be a little worried that, well, maybe this case isn't pushed back enough in the shoulder and it's not going to form correctly. But if I were to take an average of these two and say 0.454, I could say I have about 10 thousandths of headspace on this case, which is fine. It's a little bit much, but I've reset shoulders about 13 thousandths with this kind of sort of measurement before. And I'll tell you what, the first one of these that I resized, whichever one of those was the first case I did, I think it was at like 23 thousandths, which was way too much, and it actually caused a failure to fire one time. But the second one, I set it up kind of similar to this, and I had maybe 12, and it was okay. So, as you can see, I'm going to do the 9mm case thing. It's sort of like using a comparator. It's going to end up going on top of this case, like this. All right. Okay, so here I've completed my 9mm test, which was to just put a 9mm case on top of the cartridge, and you can see here that the two fireform cases came out basically the same, which kind of lends a little bit of credibility to doing this sort of test. And you can see here that I got a 2038, which is 25, I think, 25 thousandths less. Right, so you'd think, well, maybe that's case is too underformed. Well, it really, in the end, it isn't, and I'm not sure exactly what the multiplier is on this sort of thing. But needless to say, there isn't 25 thousandths difference in the overall head space on this thing. It's just exactly where this case was formed at by the dies versus the exact shape of the chamber. Okay, so there's the 3 cases. If I put them up next to each other, 25 thousandths, I think you'd even be able to see visually. So let's see how good we can do here. All right, so you can see this is down back farther, and I'm comfortable in the idea that it's probably down far enough to chamber nicely. You see this case is actually a little long. When it fires, it actually seems to get a little shorter as we fill it out. So trimming hasn't been an issue, right? But so that's what I'm up to. I wanted to show you guys a couple of different ways to do this. I think I'm going to show you how I do this thing just for fun. I'm not claiming that it's super effective or accurate or meaningful. However, it's something that I'm doing, I'm playing around with to see if maybe someday I can figure out a reliable way to do it. So I just wanted to show you what I'm doing to produce these numbers. Okay, so I'll do that in this next little clip. Okay, let's give this a shot. So the case has just got to go into the chamber. All right, so it's down in there now. And let's press it down in there. All right, so then what I'm doing is I'm taking the calipers here, and there's this lug in the back, and basically the caliper is gonna, maybe this will be a good way to show you. The caliper is gonna go into the chamber, up against the case, on the top of the feed ramps, and then I'm gonna put the caliper up against that lug. All right, so it's in the same angle every time. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see down in there, but it's up against the case and it's kind of pinned against the top of the feed ramp. Then all I do is press down like so. And I don't press too hard, and then it yields a number. So this yielded a 447 or 4465. Now, let me show you. It was hard to do that. It's very hard to do that the way I was doing it, and I probably would have to do it again, because you can see that I was getting like 463, 465 numbers. Okay, so yeah, I'm 20 thousandths off, but it's very awkward to do it this way. And you will get smaller numbers if you press down too hard, especially with my crappy calipers, because what'll basically happen is you basically bounce on what you're doing on the chamber. So let me do it again. Because believe me, if the number was bigger, I'd say, whoa, there's a problem. But because it's smaller, and I've done this a lot, I'm not that concerned about it being smaller, because basically it just means I smashed it. 4485, kind of the same thing. So yeah, let's see here. Yep, that's the fired one, or the formed one. So, and I'll do it one more time. These calipers suck. They're loose, but they have been repeatable, so I wouldn't be too surprised if this came out the same. 447, right? So the way I put it in there, I must have smashed it in pretty hard, because I basically got the fired dimensions for the formed one. So it was pretty consistent, but I must have pushed it in a lot harder than I did the first time. So you can see it's not that repeatable. I'm still kind of starting out, figuring out how to do it. Obviously, it wasn't the best example, but you can see that it was repeatable, at least with my crappy calipers. And if I did it 10 times, honestly, the numbers would be pretty close. So take it for what it is. You know, I'm not using it to set up artillery or something that's going to kill me, right? I'm using it to see, well, how does it kind of compare Now that 9mm example is kind of hard to fake out. You can see that it was quite a bit off. So I'm getting similar numbers on the fired and the formed in this example, but before I was getting 10, 15 thousandths difference, and I'm getting 25 thousandths difference with the 9mm example. So you can see that really the best thing to do is to get a proper chamber comparison gauge thing, whatever those are, throw money at the problem. However, I found when I'm forming these Wildcats, it's not always really available to pick up a nice chamber gauge or comparison gauge in the TAC 30 that is specific from AR-15 performance, right? So I'm trying to come up with other ways to do things. So I encourage you to play around too. Use your head as best you can. I have no problem loading up that case with a pretty warm charge, and it'll fire and it'll be fine. It's just that I haven't figured out the proper measurement technique for that case. I'm still messing around with it. This is kind of the fun of reloading for me. I know that some people get a lot of enjoyment out of setting up the ammo factories and getting them fully automated, and that's a great thing to do. And others of us kind of like to tinker like this, right? So the first firing, I probably won't go to a max load, probably 28.5 instead of like 30 for that particular case, just because I'm trying to make sure that it's fully blown out into the chamber. But this is the kind of fun that I really enjoy for the reloading hobby, and if you have any, thoughts or suggestions for this sort of thing, I'd love to hear it. And if you just think this is a waste of your time, I'm sorry, but this is the kind of fun experimenting and basically failing that helps kind of move things along. So have a good one.